Welcome back to The Advisor, where we turn insight into action. Today, we're going to be talking about family-based care over orphanages, practical support for U.S. foster families, and a new tool called ThriveWell. Now, Carolyn is the founder and the CEO of the Miracle Foundation. Carolyn, welcome to The Advisor. And for listeners that are new to your work, give us a quick version about who you are and why did you start the foundation in the first place?
Hi, yeah, thanks. Yeah, sure. Glad to be here. I'm Caroline Boudreaux, and I started the Miracle Foundation. A friend and I decided we would go meet the child that she had been sponsoring. So she'd been sponsoring a little kid in India, and she wanted to go meet him. Of course, I thought this
Wow.
was a bunch of malarkey, but I agreed to go. So we got to India, and we met this little boy that she'd been sponsoring in good faith, and he was getting everything that she had been promised that he was getting. It was amazing. And so we're in this little tiny village in India doing volunteer work, and then Mother's Day came, and I got up in the morning, called my mom for Mother's Day, and then went and worked in this village all day with this little boy, and then got invited to a local's house for dinner. And we walked into this local's house, and it was an orphanage. And
Wow.
I met 110 bald, empty-looking children. We had a beautiful dinner with them. We had a beautiful prayer service with them. And that night, this little girl came and put her head on my knee. And, we were picking them up. I mean, we were just calling them Velcro babies because they were just like attaching to us. They just starving
Yes.
for affection. And she uh, fell asleep in my arms. And I went to put her in her room. And I walked into her room and I found these wooden beds. And just the
Mm.
moment I put a hungry orphan baby on a wooden bed on Mother's Day, I just thought, unacceptable. How am I living the life I have when this is their life? And what have they done to deserve this? And so
Right.
I started the Miracle Foundation that day because I knew that they were miracles and they just needed a foundation. They were perfect little people. They just needed a foundation. And so started the organization that very day, that Mother's Day, 25 years ago.
Wow. That's amazing. Now, for people who grew up donating to orphanages, why families over facilities? What outcomes change when a child is with a person that means something to them or with a stable foster family?
Oh, thank you so much for asking that question. So that's what I did. So I went into this orphanage and I thought, "Oh my gosh, let me help this orphanage improve." And then I went to the next orphanage and I did the same thing, and we did the next orphanage, we did the same thing. We started improving the standards of care at
Right.
orphanages until we learned that 80% of children that live in orphanages actually have a living parent or relative that could care for them if given some support.
Wow.
And you ask children where they want to be, and they will tell you they want to be at home. They don't want to be in with a stigma in an orphanage. They don't want to grow up in an orphanage. They want to look like everybody else. They want to have a mom. When they get sick, they want their chicken noodle soup or whatever is their comfort food. They don't want some just cafeteria food when they get sick. It really does. Their outcomes are worse. They have, there's a lot more stunting in orphanages. There's a lot more danger in orphanages. I mean, if you're a bad guy, where do you want to work? I mean, you can really damage a lot of kids if you're a bad guy. So not only are orphanages uh their outcomes overall are terrible for children. They're less likely to graduate. They're more likely to commit suicide. They're, less likely to end up with a job and pay taxes in the end. Not only are those outcomes obvious, but
Yeah,
um, but why are we paying orphanages to care for children when we can help their parents?
exactly.
And so that's what we started doing. We started getting children out of orphanages and into their families. And we developed this methodology that we could use over and over again, where you could just identify, like, what is this family missing? Here are these 5 things that a family needs. They need education, they need health and mental health, they need social and family relationship support, like, is there addiction or, they need a livelihood, and they need
Yeah.
shelter, they need a house. And so if you can help a family with those 5 things, it is so much cheaper than paying someone to raise a child in an orphanage forever. So
Yeah.
so we started getting children out of orphanages and into their families, and we were so
Wow.
successful. I mean, it started working so well that now we are looking at the U.S. foster care system going, we in the United States, we went from an orphanage system to a foster care system.
Hmm.
Globally, they're going from orphanage systems to family care systems. They're
Right.
leaping right over foster care, and their system works better than ours. So now we're in the United States, working in the United States to get children in foster care back home to their families whenever
Yeah.
possible. Yeah.
Right. Oh, I love that. That is so inspirational. Now, you've said many children in orphanages have living parents or relatives. What typically is missing? How do we fill that gap? Because I don't think a lot of people know about that.
Yeah. So let's just talk about the United States for a minute.
Hmm.
You would assume that by the time a family, a child is separated and moved into foster care, you would assume that we have done something to keep that family together, and we've
Right.
not. And so, what we're suggesting is that we should start a little bit upstream.
Hmm.
When a family is in trouble, when a family needs help, let's support that family. And those are the five things all families need. They
Yes.
need social counseling, some mental health counseling, some kind of support, like, for anger management or trauma counseling, whatever it is,
Yeah.
domestic abuse counseling. If they're addicted, because everybody asks, well, what about if they're addicted? If they're addicted, they probably have a grandmother, an auntie, a cousin, a sister, a best friend's mother that they
Yeah.
actually know that they can go home to. They actually know.
Right.
And if there's any kind of, there's 12 to 20% of nefarious people out there that are bad guys that should never, they're bad actors, should never see their children again. That's what we should be using foster care for.
Right.
Not the majority of people that just need some help. And, the other thing is no parent, if they got in trouble, no parent would let their children live with a stranger.
Oh, yeah. Hmm.
We just wouldn't do it. And that's what we do every day. In fact, you and I have been on this call for about 15 minutes, and every 2 minutes, a child is separated from their family and put in foster care. So we've lost 7 children since you and I have been on this call.
That's crazy.
And you can imagine when the minute they're separated, man, the damage is done.
Yes. It is. People don't realize, but when a traumatic event happens in someone's life, all you need is one traumatic event to change that person's
Stabilize.
entire way. Yeah, it just changes the way they think, the way they feel, the way they react emotionally. It goes into their subconscious. It affects every decision in their life for the rest of their life. It builds a heart wall right around their heart where they might never be able to express love and gratitude and care the way they're capable of because of one event that occurred in their life. Now, walk us through the Miracle Foundation's methodology. Like, what are five well-being domains or accesses, that before the reunification of the family?
Yeah. So there's the five things that families need to thrive. It's called a
Mhm.
Thrive Scale. So
Okay.
it's a process there whereby we train social workers to go into these homes. They're going into these homes anyway. Someone called CPS, someone called, the Child Protective Services to get there's a problem. They're
Yeah.
going anyway. What we're training them to do is go in there and look for these five things. What is
Right.
what is the education? Who's educating the child? Are they going to
Mhm.
a good school? Do they have, like if what's happening? And if there's a problem with that, we suggest some things, some interventions to take that can really just help that family immediately. Number two, what's the livelihood? How are they making money? Who's making money? How much are they making? Are they taking advantage of the child tax credit, for example? Are
Yes.
they on SNAP? Are they um, using the nonprofits in their area to get the help that they need? The third one, of course, is health and mental health. I mean, as you said, without health and mental health, you're doomed. So where are the mental health counselors? There's so many mental health counselors out there that are available to people, and it's just a
Yeah.
matter of just attaching them, and then of course the living conditions. Is it safe for the child? Is there an affordable housing program that this family can take advantage of? Is there a Habitat for Humanity in their area that could come and
Yes.
fix their floor or cover their roof or fix their plumbing? So the five things are social and family relationships. Who's protecting the children? Is there some weird uncle hanging around too much? Like who's doing all that? Number two,
Yeah.
protecting them of all that. Number two, what about the education? Number three, the livelihood. Number four, the living conditions. And number five, the physical and mental health. So you evaluate a family on those five well-being domains. You help support that family in one of those fives. Now, if the family and social relationship is broken, that should be the one that removes. But
Yes.
so often we remove for they're not making enough money, so they can't have childcare, or their housing is deemed inappropriate, or they are not seeing a doctor when they could. So we're removing children for things that we really shouldn't be removing them for.
I agree so much on that. I've seen that. I've seen people where they have taken advantage of the system and they are just taking in kids because they want the extra pay. They want the extra monthly pay. And then I've seen families that they bring in children and they change children's lives. But you do need those five domains. You need to make sure, who is really the people that are going to help that child because it's not all about the money. A child being in a family where they see an actual family, atmosphere and they see how they interact and they see how they love each other and how they show affection and how care is brought on. These are things that they're going to absorb and they are going to create as their new environment. And they're going to bring those characteristics into the future with them because they learn, wow, parents hug. Wow, parents, they give a kiss at night. Oh, wow, they tell a story. They care, and then these are when children start to change and they start to trust and then they start to take these good values and they start to bring it into the future. So when they become adults, they actually, start to show and develop healthy families because they were in an environment with those five domains.
Exactly. And you got to, if you go upstream, here the analogy I give is, if you're walking down the street and you see a child drowning in the river, the only appropriate response is to jump in the river and save the baby. And that's
Yeah.
what I did. Of course I had to go take care of Shivani. She was suffering. She was, I jumped in the river. And then I saw another child in another orphanage and I started working with that orphanage. And then I started looking at foster care. And, it's like, then we see kids that are trafficked and then we see kids that are in child labor. And then we see children that, and you spend so much time in the river that you never look up at the bridge and see why are they in the river in the first place. And the
Exactly.
reason they're in the river in the first place, homelessness, incarceration, mental health issues, they're in the river in the first place because they had a breakdown of the family, a
Mhm.
breakdown of the family. And so many
Yeah.
times in my life, is what you and I were talking about before, so many times in your life when you have a problem, it is the family, your family that's there for you. And so
Yeah.
if we can dignify the families and empower the families without ever having to separate them, I swear we're going to
Mhm.
help ourselves so far downstream. We're not going to
Yeah.
be paying for incarceration, you know? Which, by the way, 25% of children that age out of the foster care system are going to be in jail within 2 years.
I
And
believe it.
if we do nothing, 71% of the girls are going to be pregnant by the time they're 21.
Hmm.
46% of them are going to be homeless within the first 6 years. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, like, where are we gonna focus? So,
Exactly.
our, our, uh, our colors are orange and blue because
Hmm.
orange is the sunlight, sunrise. I mean, children are in the sunrise of their life. And if we can get to
Yeah.
the sunrise, they can have a good day. They can have a good life if you can get to them early. And then
I love that.
we have the blue color because we believe in miracles. We believe in going for the moonshot. And our
Yeah.
moonshot is get children and families where they can be stabilized.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I couldn't even say it even better. That's so important to get them into homes where they can be stabilized. It makes such a big difference. Now, a story that captures this shift from an institution back to a safe, permanent family, is there anything that comes to mind, a story you'd like to share with the audience?
Oh, I mean, where do I start? I mean, you know, I
I-
mean, we reunite children with families, 18,000 times this year. I mean, that's how many
yeah,
we're operating here at scale. But, just I'll give you like one example is, when a child, like 40% of them are in these systems because of death or desertion of a father.
yeah,
So, their father dies or leaves, and then their mom can't cover it. They can't, and so sometimes they leave their children at home and go to work. They leave them overnight, and so the mother is deemed neglectful. And so
Mm.
instead of looking at the fact that there might be a problem with livelihood or there might be a problem with poverty, we're going to deem her neglectful. That's what happens. So, like Priya, there's this girl, her name's Priya. Her dad died when she was 6 years old, and she and her sisters all ended up in foster care. And it's
Hmm.
like, why are they in foster care? So finally we their mother had a mental health issue. They said that they wanted to live with their grandmother. We went and looked at the five well-being domains of the grandmother. The grandmother wanted these kids. She needed a little help with education, but
Yeah.
she needed some support. So the all the girls got reunited. They weren't separated anymore, and now they live together as a family. And not only does that grandmother get to help them, but they get to help their grandmother.
Yeah. I love that. I
And
love
that's one of the things that I've seen just so much that just kills me, Stacey. It's like, okay, so you lose your dad, and then you go end up in a foster care system, and then, so what you don't have, here's what you don't have. You don't have your grandmother. Like, who
Yeah.
are you without your grandmother? I mean, my grandmother was really important to me. So they don't even have
Yeah.
their aunts, their uncles, their cousins. They're taken away from it all. So they don't
Yeah.
just lose their parent, and they don't just lose their house, and they don't just lose their trust, and they don't just lose their faith. They lose their family.
Yes.
And
And
it's a
I don't
big, big price to pay.
It is. It's a very big price to pay. I was just going to say that I don't think people realize the price they have to pay. When that happens, those people in our lives mean so much to us. The grandmother, the uncle, the aunt, they play such a big role in a child when they have positive influences in their life and they see these positive influences. I could still remember back in the day, my grandmother saying, I would sit by her on the couch and I would say, "Tell me another story, Grandma." It's just, these people make a big difference in children's life. Now, when we're zooming into the US, what should people know specifically? Because I think a lot of times people don't always know what's happening in a lot of these impoverished areas. They have no clue. A lot of people are blessed in the US and they don't realize how blessed they are. But when you go into impoverished areas and you go into either impoverished areas in the United States or impoverished areas in other countries, you are shocked because you don't realize what's going on in the school system, in the family lives, how people are struggling, how people will do anything just to support their family and put food on the table. And people have no clue. People, when your family is, on the verge of starving, and you'll do anything to help your family. And sometimes people don't realize why people go to such extents to do the things they do. And it may not make sense to some people, but they do it because they want to help the people they love. And, maybe you could zoom in on that a little bit in the US and make people aware of what's really going on. Because I don't think a lot of people that are blessed, in this United States realize how bad certain areas in the United States are and how bad certain areas in other countries are.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the first thing we can do is we can all just thank our lucky stars if we do have a family. That's just the first thing we
Yeah.
do that. And then, I think there's a lot of stereotypes that go on. I think
Mhm.
stereotyping is a pretty dangerous thing where
Yes.
if like you said, like they're making bad decisions. We know the decisions that they're making, but we oftentimes don't know the options that they had.
Yeah.
When it looks like you've made a bad decision, you really should look at what the options were that they
Yes.
chose from because they weren't necessarily what you had. So I will tell you that one of the things we looked at when we started looking at listening to the system, we started listening. We did a 2 year research on the foster care system, and what we learned is that 60% of foster families quit within the first year.
Wow.
And we understood why foster families quit because it's a very, very hard job, and we make it really, just let's just make it like really hard to be a parent. Let's just see how hard we can make it to be a parent. And then
Yeah.
we looked at the 60% that stayed, and we looked at the 40, I mean, the 60% that left, but then we looked at the 40% that stayed. And what they had was a case manager. They had a case manager that could really support them and care for them. So then we started looking at case managers who are the boots on the ground in our society. They are the ones that are making these decisions every single day. And some of them have 60 cases.
Yes.
They're totally overworked. They're totally underpaid. They're at their basketball game with their son on Friday night, and someone calls and somebody's getting abused, and they have to leave their son and go take care. I mean, it's like it's a really, really, really hard job. And We know who the best football player in the country is, but do we have any idea who the best social worker in the country is? So
Right.
we started betting on case managers, and we started supplying tools, education, equipment, technology to case managers, and we've
Yeah.
really been able to make a difference by focusing on that and on them. And then the other thing is, like we want children to be helped. Today we have a child welfare system. That's what we have. And
Yes.
and that's not working. What we need to move to is we need to move to a family support system and start really supporting families. And families have a bad rap,
Yeah.
oh, they're all on drugs, they're all addicted, they've all been in jail, and it's not that they don't ever have any problems. And if they're a bad guy, they shouldn't be with their kids. But
Yeah.
many times they're not bad, they're just poor. And so, how do you train social workers to discern the difference? Are sleeping on a mattress with rats on the floor because they're poor? Are they sleeping on the floor with mattress on the floor with rats because of neglect? Which one is it?
Exactly.
So our bet is on the social workers. And if you're a social worker and you're listening to this, our hats are off to you because you're up there with teachers, you do God's work, and we just appreciate
Yes.
you. And then just so arming them so that they can take care of families is our secret sauce.
Yeah. Oh, for sure, for sure. I know many people who are social workers, and like you said, they are so undercredited. There are not enough of them, first of all, and the ones that they have are totally overworked, and their pay it doesn't even suffice what they deserve for the amount of work they do, for the amount of paperwork they do, for the amount of travel, and having to make these serious decisions when they go into these homes, and it takes a lot. It takes a lot, and it's
Oh, sorry. We
no,
like I said, we started in India and we started getting children from orphanages into families. And now we're doing that just at scale. The government is on board. We partner with the government. It's like really truly working. It's such an ambitious child welfare family support reform around the world. It's the biggest child welfare reform around the world. And so if
yeah,
we can do that around the world, why can we not do that right here in this country? So
exactly.
we think we can solve this. We think this
Yeah,
is something that doesn't have to be broken. It's not going to take as much to fix it as everybody thinks. It's just going to take some time, some money, and some willpower. That's what it's going
yeah,
to take.
exactly. Exactly. Now, what are some of the top pressure points today? Placements, caseworker time, caregiver burnout. Like, what are some of the things that you see, and what are some of your suggestions that you think need to be made?
Like I said, supporting the people that are already in the system. So in the
Yeah.
system already are foster families. They need to be supported. They're bio
Mhm.
families. They need to be supported. There's case managers. They need to be supported. So we focus on the people that are already in the system. We're not hiring a bunch of more social workers.
Okay.
We're not creating a parallel system. And
Right.
systems work is like I said at the bridge. You're on the top of the bridge. You're
Yes.
preventing people from entering the system. You're not letting people fall in the water. And so
Right.
when you're working with a system and you support a case manager, you support a bio family, you support a foster family, you pull on one thread in the system and the entire system changes.
Yes. Yes, it does.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
truth.
So our big bet is on providing tools and technology to foster families, case managers, and bio families,
Yes.
and making their lives better, getting them more resources, helping them identify interventions out there, helping them identify, like, building their solutions out, and
Yes.
helping them find solutions because there's a million solutions out there. And when you take care of the system starts to work.
Yes, that is so true. That is
It's
so
so
true.
good. It's so good.
It is so good. And I'm so glad you're doing it. And, one thing I want to talk about is let's talk about, tech with a heart, the ThriveWell. I want to learn more about that. Now, what is ThriveWell in plain English, and who uses it day to day?
Yeah. ThriveWell is a technology platform for case managers, foster families, and bio families to do their job. That's
Excellent.
basically what it is. So if a foster family has to report to a case manager every day, they can report to the case manager every day with an emoticon.
I
One
like that.
button. and they can tell that case manager how they're doing. The case manager can figure out what of the cases she needs to prioritize on because she's going to look at those emoticons. She's going to see a lot of green, she's going to see some yellows, and she's going to see some reds. She can go straight to the reds, you know?
Mm.
So, they were reporting that they spend a lot more time on paperwork than they do on supporting. And so we've made this paperwork really, really easy. We've made it, like I said, there's text to talk, there's talk to text, so the case manager can be in their car and just report on what they saw. And so, yeah, we're supporting the people that are in the system.
I love that. I love that. Now, how does the AI help? Like, what signals does it pull from the notes, and how does it help to prioritize cases and prevent disruption?
Yeah, so for example, if you have a family and you fill out one of their well-being domains and there's an issue with their livelihood,
Yeah.
the AI is going to suggest what interventions you could do for that mother or that family to fix that particular intervention. So it's learning from itself. So if one case manager says, "Hey," it's like that's how it happened with the child tax credit. One case manager said, this family should have, they are not on the child tax credit. Well, now everybody that fills out that particular part of that app, if they have a problem with the livelihood, one of the questions is, are you applying for the child tax credit? And then the other thing is if so it teaches the foster families, the case managers, and the bio families what interventions are out there. And it
That's
also
great.
measures how long does it take from identifying that intervention to getting it, because you might learn about the child tax credit, but you're not going to get it until after May of next year. So
Right.
what happens to you in between that time, and did you actually get that intervention?
Oh, I
So
love that.
technology is a powerful thing. I mean, it's like this, yeah, let's use technology for good, like really benefit the,
Yeah.
and then, not to mention, a lot of this stuff is actually when we started 3 years ago, we've only been doing this for 3 years. They were faxing information back and forth for the love of
I
God.
know. Oh my God.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, let's get it on an app so we can collect some real data to figure out what does work and what
Yeah,
doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, let's quit doing it.
exactly. Exactly. Now, what's next? Like, what new features or partnerships do you see in the next coming of 12 months ahead?
Well, in the next 12 months, we will saturate Texas. So we're in almost every county in the state of Texas. We'll be growing
Hmm.
that. We're looking at other states. We're talking to other states. So, when you have a piece of technology and you have a methodology, it's a lot
Yeah,
easier to scale and get to more people. So
right.
we're focusing on building out the technology so that more and more people can use it, because obviously every state has different compliances, different needs, different, systems to integrate with. And so
Yeah,
that's what we're going to be doing over the next
I
12 months.
love that. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Growing. We're growing. We're improving.
Yes,
Yeah.
I love it. I love
Getting
it.
it into the hands of more families and case managers.
Oh, that's so awesome. Now, for right now, like, how do we keep kids safe? So let's do like a rapid fire, like 60 seconds for each question I ask you, like to help people. Like, so if you have a grandma, like someone who is taking over the grandma, position, and she's trying to fill in for that, what are like taking in two siblings, what support moves, helps the needle the fastest? So, to help somebody.
Every woman needs a wife. I mean, if you know someone that's raising kids and having help, go to the grocery store for them, make them dinner. I mean, these are, super practical. Just they need a wife, they need a maid, they need a chauffeur, they need that's what they need. So,
Yeah.
and one of the things I learned, this be the 60 seconds, but one of the things I've learned is that every child just needs one. They just need one person that loves them. And
Yes.
they don't need
I,
10. They don't need I mean, it helps to have a village, but if we all just supported one family, we could totally do this.
oh, I agree with you totally. Sometimes, people don't realize that you don't have to, feed a whole town. Just helping one person can make a humongous impact. And if everybody sees that and does the same thing, magic can like truly happen
And
for
if
sure.
live in a bubble, which many of us do, and you don't know somebody that is struggling or somebody that could really need help, that's when you support a nonprofit and you support them monthly. That if you
Yes.
really help a nonprofit, you donate monthly. And
Yeah.
donate like you mean it. I mean, like lean in there. It's like, are we buying our purses like we mean it? We certainly are. Can
Yeah.
we talk about philanthropy like we really mean it? And so that monthly giving, that is like powerhouse. And then the other thing I recommend for people is like pick your topic and lean in. Instead of
Yeah.
donating 100 organizations, donate to 3 organizations and push it.
Exactly.
Laser.
Yo, that's great advice for sure. Now, for first-time foster parent with a teen, what does a great week, like one plan look like to you?
It looks like normal. Ideally, it's almost boring. I But if it's a foster kid, you definitely are going to have more challenges because they've been separated from their families and they're undergoing trauma and they need trauma-informed
Right.
care. And trauma-informed care just means you don't look what's wrong with you, you look what happened to you. What happened to you?
Exactly.
That's how you approach them. And so, the foster family learning how to care for a child that's going through trauma is just as important as taking care of their physical needs. Their mental needs are really big.
And I think that what you said was really important. Find out what happened to them and you try to put yourself in their shoes in your head for 1 second and try to make you see if you could relate. And, if that happened to me, how would I react? And then you could start to correspond. You may not act exactly the way they would, but you starting to get an idea of why they may act a certain way or say certain things or do certain things. And you could have more compassion and you can relate better and have that discussion with them because communication is key. And if you could start sitting down and talking to them and empathizing with them and showing compassion, magic could definitely happen. Definitely. Now, for the employer who wants to help, what programs matter? Like gift matching, PTO for fostering, volunteer days.
Gift matching is big. Gift matching is really big. It's really the volunteer side is hard. I think volunteering is pretty hard because, when you're volunteering with an organization, sometimes, other things, your mom comes in town and you blow that off, and it's just a real hard way to do business. We don't actually work through volunteers. It feels
Hmm.
good doing it, but it's just like it's not really sustainable. Um,
Right.
and in this particular field, this is serious business here.
Yeah.
We depend on experts. We depend on true experts, and the average bear is not one. So to
Right.
tell the average bear to go help a child that has been traumatized, it doesn't really work.
Right. Now, for a concerned neighbor, how do they help a nearby family before crisis occurs?
Paying attention, being their friend, showing up when they need, so many people, the child care thing is an issue. So
Yeah.
who is taking care of the children when the family needs to go to work? That child care issue is huge. Transportation is huge. If
Hmm.
you're lucky enough to know a family that needs help, it's not hard to help. It's
Yeah.
it's really easy to help. And then they will tell you if you let them.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And that's so important too, because sometimes people see things and they ignore it, and you shouldn't ignore it because if you see something and it's not right and someone could be getting hurt or there could be problems, you should do something and take action. And sometimes you could just do it anonymously. You don't have to tell, you could just give, go to the authority, go somewhere, go, make a phone call, say, something doesn't look right, and explain what you see and then let, other things, go into other people's hands and they'll take matters into their own hands. But, because you never know, bad things could occur if people don't take action, and it's happened many times. Now, for listeners who we promise them 5 concrete actions. So, what are 5 concrete actions like family, like meals, rides, tutoring, pick up, one or do another? Like, what are some things that 5 things that you think that families should do, to help in this situation?
So, like I said, it's pretty hard to find the right family that needs your help. So, what we say is money, if you could support a nonprofit organization that's really working upstream, like in the river, there's a lot of it. There's a lot of us.
Yeah.
But if, working upstream enough to really prevent this in the first place, that is the
Yes.
magic of it. I mean, that really, really, really works. And then a megaphone, like spend some time talking about what's going on here. Like, are we serious about transforming this, or are we just not, are we just gonna like say maybe it's not my problem, maybe it's not my bear? I
Right.
just think that, we need to be getting way more serious about actually solving these problems and actually doing something with it. And so taking
Mhm.
our own time, our own money, and our own megaphone to start really talking about it. Those are the things that I really, really, truly recommend. I mean, it would be nice if we could all do ride shares and help families, but that's not just really the way. It's like I don't know that we know enough people around us that need it. So
Yeah.
yeah, you could leave it up to the experts to find the families that truly need it.
Oh, I love it. And what about sharing it, sharing the signal, sharing the concept? Is there ways that other people can share the word about your
Oh, yeah.
foundation?
I like, thank you for having us. This is powerful. I mean, being on a podcast and getting to talk about this work to say, we are going to fix this and it's probably not, we're not going to die trying because we're going to fix it. Like we fixed the orphanage stuff. We're
Yeah.
really going to fix it. So talking about it, following us on social media, going to our website, signing up for our newsletters, anything you can do to help us spread the word is powerful.
I love that. I love
Yeah,
that.
and remember that they're miracles and they just really need a foundation. Like every child is a
Yeah.
miracle. They just need a foundation. That's why we called it the Miracle Foundation.
I love it. I love it. And it's so true. It's so easy to perform a miracle. People, all you have to do is just show a little love, a little care, do a little something. And it's amazing, what could happen, through that. Just giving a little bit, can go such a long way. And it's so true. And
Oh, so long. It cost Miracle Foundation about $1,260 to get a child out of foster care and into a permanent family.
wow.
$1,260. It's amazing.
That is amazing. That is amazing. Now, what can people do to help? Can you tell us some of the services you provide and how people can get involved? Is there a way they can donate and help you?
Yeah, they can, like I said, the money, megaphone, and minutes. So money, $1,260 gets a child out of foster care and into their families. We do that all day long. A megaphone, like following us on social media, getting us on a podcast, getting us interviewed on the press, all that. And then minutes is like take some time and look around you and like look for someone to bless. Look for someone, that family that really, really might need some help. And if you find them, man, go for it. Help them together. Keep them together.
I love it. I love it. Oh my goodness. So this has been amazing. I thank you so much, Caroline, for coming on the show. I thank you so much for what you do. What you do is amazing. And, you have a heart of gold, and it's amazing how you took the one trip and you saw so many things that just, it shocked you because you didn't even realize at the moment that things like this really occurred, because you weren't around an environment like that. So it didn't even phase you probably, and then when
Right.
you got there, you were shocked, and to them it was normal, but to us it was, you know, unspeakable, and you're giving people a second chance of life. You're giving people the opportunity to become a better person, to live a life that they didn't think they were going to be, and then to be able to find somebody, maybe share a life with somebody one day and then have their own family and improve the quality of life of people around, so you're really doing a miraculous job. And I want to thank you so much for what you do. What you're doing is amazing. And I'm so glad there are people like you who are doing what you're doing. And I think it's so important that your foundation is acknowledged, worldwide, because, if everybody just, $1,200 is not a lot of money. For some people, they might say, oh my goodness. But if you think about it, you're taking one child out of foster care and you're putting them with a real family. And that's big. For $1,200, you are changing a child's life forever. And that's a lot.
Thank you, Stacey. And it's true, what it's like it's one thing to help the people on the giving, on the side of the recipients, But they do us a big favor by letting us take part in their life too. When you give and you take care of people and you look for families and you support them and any kind of thing, it changes who we are too. You know?
Yes.
So everybody wins in this scenario.
Yes. And I gotta say, where I come from on the East Coast, you could easily go out to dinner and a dinner can cost you $350 in our area. Just a steak alone is over $100, where I come from. And so you go out and you say you spend $350 for a couple just to go out and have a dinner on a Saturday night, and that's not maybe even accounting, maybe a drink or two or whatever. And you think about maybe doing that 3 or 4 times, and maybe four times, and you've taken that money, and instead of going out and having those dinners for 1 month, taking that money and just giving it to a foundation like yours, you change a child's life forever. So when you think of it in that way, it's really not much at all. Everybody has money to spend. We just choose what we want to spend money on, but everybody has money that they could spend. It's just what they think is important. And, I'm glad you're on the show because what you're doing is important and people have to acknowledge that and really, make a donation and be able to change somebody's life because there's so many people out there suffering that need to be with families.
Yeah, and it changes our life to give. It changes who we
Yeah.
are when we give, you know?
Yeah, you change one person's life and it's the accomplishment and the feeling that you have after you've actually helped another individual change their life forever. It's unspeakable.
It feels so much better than that steak.
It feels so much better than that steak. It really does. I can go a month without eating steak for sure, definitely.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm so glad, Caroline, you came on the
Thank-
show. Now, is there anything else that you want to add to our conversation today that you could think of?
Oh, just thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to talk to you. Just a joy. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Now, tell everybody before you go, just remind everybody of your website so they know where to go.
Yeah, it's miraclefoundation.org.
I love it. Oh, thank you so much. It's been great to talk to you. I hope you'll be back on the show, and I had a great time. Thank you
Great.
so much.
Okay. Bye.
Bye bye.